Shrink the Nation is a podcast for thoughtful, informed adults, preferably with a pour in hand. The views and opinions expressed on the show are those of the hosts and guests only and do not reflect the views of any employers, institutions, licensing boards, government agencies, bourbon distilleries, or family members, especially our family members. They've asked us to be very clear about that. This show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing said here should be taken as medical, psychiatric, legal, or professional advice. If you're in crisis, call a professional. If you're mad at something we said, we suggest journaling or emailing us with civility. We're here to challenge ideas, not diagnose strangers. We're clinicians, not your clinicians, and we have the bourbon to prove it. Let's go. Tonight, we're talking about a very modern confession. The algorithm made me do it. Not because your phone is sentient or evil, but because it's exquisitely tuned to what already lives in your head and gut. Your feed isn't a therapist. It's a slot machine with a PhD in you. It learns your spikes, anger, fear, curiosity, validation, and pays you in tiny hits of maybe the next one. That's dopamine and variable reward doing their thing. And once the hook is in, the psychology kicks hard. We project. They're the liars, not me. We split. Good tribe, bad tribe, no gray. We dodge cognitive dissonance. When facts bump our identity, we move the goalposts instead of our beliefs. Do it together at speed, and you can get mass delusions. Shared stories that feel truer than reality because they fit the feelings. That's how curated reality becomes civic reality. Neighbors stop sharing facts. Candidates make micro promises to micro audiences. Accountability fog rolls in. We start governing from inside the feed. Quick reality check. Humans have panicked about every new medium since Plato whined that writing would ruin memory. Printing press, radio, TV, video games, we adapted. So this isn't a doom sermon, it's a practical one. Put seatbelts on our dopamine and guardrails on our feeds and get our agency back. Pour something, take a breath, and let's do this. This is Shrink the Nation. The algorithm made me do it, curated realities, and the American experiment. I'm David. I'm a board certified psychiatrist, and tonight I'm pouring a Basil Hayden, which is a lovely little bourbon. Robbie Mash Bill, 63% corn, 27% rye, 10% malted barley, which is the high rye bourbon mash bill, the official corporate wording, high rye. They avoid the numbers. That's cute, but not useful. So 27% rye. A little more sharp than the weeded ones that I enjoy, but hey, it's Basil Hayden, so we'll forgive.
So Basil Hayden's made by Jim Beam Distilleries. It's Jim Beam in a different section of their warehouse. Although it is aged a little longer, gives it a little smoother character for a high rye.
Why do you got to rain on my parade, man?
Yeah.
Somebody's got to shit in the pie, don't they?
Yes. Yeah. It's got an interesting bottle, though. You're paying for the bottle. I'm doing Jim Beam Black Label, which is my old-timey go-to. Has the identical mash bill, actually, because it's the same thing. It's just, yours is aged a little longer, though. Yeah.
Like how we like our women. I like them aged a little longer. You like them, much younger.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, I'm Rob. I got 25 years in the field of psychiatry, board certified, and about 30 years in the military. I found this particularly interesting, and it actually has become much more salient to me in the last several months because I have been away from home for the last several months, which has afforded me an interesting opportunity to do a lot of Netflixing. And is that a verb? Netflixing?
I think Netflix and chill is a verb, but I imagine that your spouse would be very unhappy to find you Netflix and chilling. Although I guess you could be doing it by yourself, but that's a different story altogether.
It's the Netflix component of that. But what has killed me as I've been engaged in it is that it's like they took a restraining order out on Surprise because I watch one documentary on like Flemish bowstring making. And now all I get is documentaries. All they recommend is documentaries on like primitive weaponry. I love when they ask me, are you still watching? Like they have no concept that I've not even blinked in 4 hours, much less moved. But it does strike at their ability to observe what I'm doing, when I'm doing it, and then make some predictions that help keep me engaged and watching much longer than I probably would have otherwise. It's made me think about how much of our online behavior is being controlled.
Tonight, we're going to be hitting a couple of lanes, why the feed feels addictive, and then how they supercharge projection, splitting, cognitive dissonance, dodging, and then mass delusions, and what that does to American democracy.
It's kind of perfect for us. David and I both have a background in doing addiction medicine, and the feed feels addictive because it is, in the strictest terms. These platforms have been very skillful in hijacking our neurobiology. I don't want to get too much in the weeds of neurobiological terminology, but we do have an addiction center in our brain, literally in the center of our brain. Some reference it as a pleasure center. I think a better way to look at it is a salience center. It tells us what is important, what should we focus on. We mostly associate it with substances, but honestly, it was more or less designed for feeding and mating behavior, really fundamentally. And from a feeding standpoint, our ancestors who were geared toward craving fats and sugars ended up thriving. They did better because it took a lot of work to get fats and sugar. You had to go out and hunt, kill an animal, drag it back to wherever you were at. It took effort. And if we had got the same pleasure from just grabbing handfuls of grass off the ground and shoving them in our mouth, then why would we have put the effort into hunting? Well, we didn't. It's more pleasurable to eat those sorts of things for most people. The modern world, even though we're geared toward wanting fats and carbohydrates at a certain percentage, the problem is we were not designed to have a McDonald's on every corner. Much of human history has been about fear of starvation. We are now at an interesting inflection point in which it's the opposite, that it's overconsumption, obesity that's killing us. Very similarly with modern technology, social media, our attention span was not designed to necessarily deal with what these companies have struck on and how they can grab our attention and how they know to present it in a certain way that provides that dopamine hit. There's a reward factor in the way they present this information. I watch my kiddos, and any time that they're uncomfortable, anytime that they're bored, anytime that they're a little anxious, where does their hand go? It goes to their phone, they pull it up, and they start scrolling to calm themselves down because it's a soothing mechanism for them. It might as well be a crack pipe in their pocket. The problem is that it is so accessible all the time, the touch of a finger.
How much of it is soothing anxiety from external sources, and how much of it do we think is the withdrawal from the technology? And it's probably a mixture of both. Dopamine hit, the reward pathway, the pleasure center, the nucleus accumbens is particularly triggered by dopamine. When you do something that is rewarding, you release dopamine, and that feels good. And that's a signal to keep doing it. But just like substances, when you don't have it, then you're not getting the dopamine hit anymore. Therein lies withdrawal. Now, there's some physiological withdrawal from the substances, but there's also that lack of incoming dopamine in that nucleus accumbens. And so how much of the soothing that's happening with all of our kiddos, and hell, a lot of us, let's be honest, is coming from an external source. Like, I'm feeling anxious about whatever is happening, so I reach for my phone to calm me down, versus how much of it is I'm just reaching for my phone to calm me down because I just haven't looked at my phone for a while.
It's a good question, and I unfortunately don't have an answer for you, but at this particular juncture, we really don't have a diagnosis that incorporates the phones or social media or anything like that from a diagnostic standpoint. So no official diagnosis, but certainly just as a human, I mean, I don't do social media, but I know I probably scroll through my news feed way more than I really need to because, as it turns out, news does not happen as quickly as I'm checking it 4 times an hour or whatever the case may be. So I know personally I'm drawn to it just when I'm separated from it for a while. And I certainly do see that in my kids as well. And I imagine our tens of listeners can identify with this, that when they're separated away from their phone for a bit, that need to check messages, their social media feeds is there. You feel it at your core. It's not just curiosity driving it.
Do you ever experience, I like to call it the Judd Apatow effect. I'll explain it, but really it's just tolerance. It's just the ability to learn to tolerate things. You know who Judd Apatow is? He's a director who directs a ton of movies.
40-Year-Old Virgin.
Superbad. If you ever watch his more recent movies, they are far more. The level of coarseness, to put it nicely, that comes with the more recent ones, there's a lot more of it. But if you were to start out watching his earlier movies, there's not as much. And so if you watch them one by one in order, you kind of learn to tolerate that coarseness to where you need more of it to get more laughter out of it. But I think if somebody were to have never seen any of them and watch the most recent one, they might be way overstimulated. It's like you need that constant exposure to the insanity that is our reality right now to be able to really fully tolerate it, or even to make it just not stimulate as much. It really blunts it. That is the saturation of your nucleus accumbens. You keep getting those dopamine hits, but once they're fully saturated, you really don't take as much from it. If you're to step away from your news for that week and then come back, you're like, holy shit, what is happening?
The world's burning.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Part of that is just the way that news is written. If you read the same articles on something like the Boring app, it really just doesn't hit. It's just giving you the news.
There is a tendency, and we can call it the Judd Apatow effect. We could call it the Star Wars effect, but anything that is successful has a tendency to then play up the elements that they were successful with, and then they amplify those. You follow a movie series or you follow Happy Days. There's a great example here. Jump the Shark. Play up what is successful, and you get to the point where you're a caricature. The difference is social media actually magnifies this significantly because the time scale gets shrunk. Usually the story with content creators is that when they get started, they're just throwing stuff against the wall. Sports, movies, I do this, I do that. And then something that they say starts getting likes, at which point they focus in on that more and more and more. They magnify. Before you know it, they have become a caricature of what they started out to be. And that is probably very human. Has always existed. The difference is the time scale and the amplitude that is available now because of social media platforms.
We do the same thing with education. High school, you kind of learn everything. If you do end up going to college, you have to take your general education, and then hopefully something becomes really salient to you, and then you start finding your major. For those of us in medicine, we do the exact same thing there. We go to med school and we're just learning everything, and then hopefully something just kind of hits our excitement and we say, oh, this is the thing I want to do. For those of us who are fortunate, something that we actually want to do. For those of us who were just chasing money, it's usually dermatology. And then we just learn all about that thing because we're interested. There are a lot of parallels. This is a human behavior, but supercharged now within the social media environment and living within our feeds.
Yeah. Ultra processed.
Ultra processed to the point that the question is, at what point was it real?
Yeah.
Is there any reality to it? With processed food, you have theoretically starts out as food and then it's safe enough to eat. But if it's grown in a lab and was never something that we would have eaten to begin with, that's ultra processed. That's the difference between telling a fantastical story to your friend from an experience you had and what social media has become.
So there are two elements here I think are salient to us as humans. Part of it is the neurobiology, and then part of it is the psychology. The neurobiology we've touched on, but there is a psychological piece. These platforms have been masterful in tweaking the neurobiology and certainly getting at how they stimulate this dump of dopamine for us. There is another element, which is the psychological side of it. Ultimately, what we'll end up talking about is how this model ends up creating echo chambers for us. The way it happens, not only are we drawn to it, we end up self-creating, using their algorithm, an echo chamber. And those echo chambers are based on projection. I can't tolerate something that's within me. So whether it be fear or aggression or bias, so I paste it out on the world, on someone else. I'm not corrupt. They are corrupt. We have this tendency to project splitting, which is black and white thinking. It is very difficult to tolerate nuance as a human being. All the shades of gray are hard to sit with. Much easier to see the world in blacks and whites, goods and bads, us and them. In our social media feeds, the rabbit holes we end up going down end up supporting that splitting. We have talked about this in the past, cognitive dissonance, the coming to understand that an idea you hold, that there is evidence that conflicts with it, or that a behavior that you're engaged in conflicts with a value that you hold. We want to avoid that. Ultimately, humans in a very amoeba-like way will drift away from negative stimuli. Anything that makes us feel anxious or feel concerned or upset, we are going to try to avoid. And in our social media feeds, we will avoid the things that cause cognitive dissonance. And then there's mass delusion. This is a socially reinforced shared false belief. It feels true because it's beloved, it's repeated, it's identity confirming, but not that it's actually true. These things end up resulting in us curating and the algorithm, working with the platform's background algorithm, which is identifying what do we linger on, what do we click, what draws our attention. We end up behaving in a way based on projection splitting, avoidance of cognitive dissonance, and supporting this sort of mass delusion, which creates these micro echo chambers, very highly curated online environment for us that can be very problematic in the long term.
Essentially, if it's something that triggers an emotional response, you're much more likely to stick with it. It's renting space in your brain. You feel like you have to keep participating, going back for dopamine hits or just reaffirming your own identity through this feed. It's your own little slot machine in your pocket, and the payouts are likes. So those are the psychological concepts we talk about with it.
This is the utterly fascinating thing. Think about Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at least based on my research. I don't use TikTok, I have to admit. But my research tells me that TikTok is the king in terms of their ability to utilize their algorithm in this way. When it comes down to it, these environments, they create nothing. They are a platform and an algorithm. That is it. They're designed solely to pull in human eyes as their product. We who engage in these things is the product of Facebook. Facebook does not build things. It does not do things. It is designed to suck in eyeballs and time and attention. There's an argument to be made that our economy now is an attention economy that is really based on stealing away our attention. They rely on us for content creation. So we are the content creators. We actually make the things that we're watching, but their algorithm steers us to it. Really, what we're looking for is something that surprises us, something that is better than expected. And it happens on a variable level. So you never know, but maybe that next thing you swipe to might be that thing that makes you giggle, laugh, feel smarter than other people. With my kids, they really dig it when there's a meme or a thing that they get that no one else gets. It really drives them and makes them feel special. And that's what we're looking for. And that's how they capture us and how they grab us and why we keep coming back, because we just want that feeling that it gives us, or we never can predict it, but we think maybe the next swipe, the next thing in the feed is going to be the thing that captures our attention.
Very much taps in the dopamine reward system as far as the better than expected surprise. So it's a classic variable ratio reinforcement, which is what slot machines operate off of. But every once in a while, you get that really good hit. It's got to be random and it has to hit. You have to hit. Otherwise, people won't do it. But social media has taken that and they've distilled it into no action on your part. It's just a scroll. Just keep scrolling.
Yeah.
Reward those who make the content that people are getting the hits from by bringing more people to it. That's the magic of the algorithm. TikTok being the king of this and you not being on TikTok, probably good. I think it might be too much for you.
My old heart couldn't take it. Yeah.
I lose my co-host here.
Yeah.
It'd just be Robbie looking at Flemish bow making little.
I've given away my old manhood by the fact that I was looking at Flemish bowstring making. Yeah. Yeah, you can make a jig. It's magical. It's truly magical.
I know what's going to happen as soon as you get home. What TikTok does is they break down the elements of each video. They categorize each into its individual components. and they have all the different pieces. Just fine tune your algorithm based upon the things that you're more likely to look at until you're just looking at stuff that you like. It's brilliant and diabolical. And it works. It works really well because it plays off of our neurobiology and our psychology.
Absolutely.
It's a double hit. Classic variable ratio reinforcement builds habits faster than anything.
For the tens of listeners who might be interested in psychological studies, so addiction medicine, they've done so many interesting studies looking at poor rats. I cannot even imagine the number of rats that have been addicted to random substances in the name of science. But so they looked at rats who had these levers that they could pull, and you got food, and levers that you could pull, and you got cocaine. And surprise, surprise, rats would pull the lever with the cocaine, and they'd actually pull the lever for the cocaine on the one that was variable. So if every time they pulled it, they got cocaine, they didn't pull it as much. But if it was a variable reward, so they could not predict when they would get the cocaine, they would pull the lever much, much more. And that's kind of what we're doing. So, you might go to Facebook 10 times a day. You might go to Facebook more than that. I don't know what the average person, how many ever times you go to Facebook. You're going to Facebook because you're looking for that juicy stuff, the arguments, the fights, the things that happen that really are engaging and that you can screenshot and send to your buddies and talk about. Most of the time you don't get that. It just doesn't happen. But every once in a while, you hit the mother lode. And that variability is what keeps you coming back and why you check it 20 or 40 times a day.
Well, it really does tap into, again, our neurobiology, hitting a different pathway. So you have these thumbnails, you have the autoplay, and those are cues to our brain that trigger a craving to keep going. And what that does is it lights up the two pathways that we spoke about. You didn't say the word amygdala, but it lights up our reward pathway, the nucleus accumbens, and it lights up our salience pathway, the amygdala. It gives us actual physiologic craving to keep scrolling, find the next thing. Your prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain, it's the part of your brain that we have, some other mammals have, and really nothing else. It's what allows us to think about thinking. It's what sets us apart. That and our thumbs is really what has made us the most successful. It's what has made us the most successful creatures on the planet.
The phone has now become a distinguishing characteristic for humanity. So for our tens of listeners, as you listen to this right now, it is your prefrontal cortex that is the you think of at this moment. All the other stuff, all the other underlying mechanisms that are below the surface are the things like when you're driving your car, you don't think about the alternator, you don't think about the pistons, you just think about the car and it getting you from point A to point B. But right now, you're thinking about and using your prefrontal cortex. Everything else that actually drives you, motivates you, creates the emotions and the feelings that end up affecting your choices are filtered through that prefrontal cortex. And the problem with this is that when your nucleus accumbens, the pleasure center or the salient center of the brain is perpetually stimulated, it ends up exhausting the prefrontal cortex. So we stop thinking, start just acting.
Exactly. The prefrontal cortex is the brakes of the brain in a lot of these situations. And when we're just so tired, especially late in the day, when we are stressed out, anxious, sleep deprived, laying there in bed, looking at Facebook, TikTok, or Instagram, just scrolling, our prefrontal cortex is no longer in its own right state of mind. It is your mind, but is not in the right state of mind to say, okay, stop. For the love of God, stop. I want to go to bed. And you just keep going.
Absolutely. I think everybody who's listening to this has had that experience where they tell themselves, oh my God, I have to quit this. I have to stop. That they're totally in autopilot and an hour and a half's gone by because they are not critically thinking any longer. They're stuck in a loop and they actually have to exert energy to stop it. It's a surprising experience when you realize I just went down the rabbit hole for an hour and a half and really could not tell you what I've done. There was no thought associated with it. I was just responding to stimuli.
And there's another neurobiological concept that plays into this as well that even I just learned about, or at least the name of it, but the Zeigarnik effect, that our brains really hate open loops. So whenever there's cliffhangers or an infinite scroll, there's just no end in sight.
Got to get to the bottom.
There's an itch. Yeah, I got to keep going. If you're reading in bed, there's an end to the book. And so you might be tempted to put it down because there's an end to the chapter. I'm going to read until the end of this chapter. And then I feel like I can close it out and set it down. When you're looking at Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, it just keeps going. And your brain hates that. It's like, I got to keep looking.
Yeah.
Prefrontal cortex never activates to say, okay, you got to stop. It's diabolical, but it's deliciously diabolical.
It is.
Our phones is what makes this possible. If we were doing this in front of a computer, it wouldn't probably hit quite to the same effect because we just don't have that same access. You wouldn't be carrying around a desktop computer everywhere. You wouldn't be sitting on the toilet with your desktop computer for an hour and a half until your legs go numb. But with your phone, you absolutely do. It's impossible, but you almost think, gosh, there a group of people sitting around in a lab somewhere going like, we're going to really fuck with humanity here. And the truth is, no, of course not. They tapped into these principles, maybe on purpose, maybe by accident, but they found them as we do. And it's amazing to look at it and see it and go, gosh, I've definitely done those things myself, and you don't even realize it. And I'm assuming that our tens of listeners can most likely relate. At minimum, they know somebody in their household.
If every single listener couldn't absolutely identify with this, I would be stunned. Because as much as I've made a conscious effort to avoid social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, I absolutely have had the experience. It's one of the reasons why I stopped using them, actually. I had no ability to control it.
Social media platforms make it easier. They have tapped into this. The reason that they're able to be so successful at it, I believe, is because their content that is available is just unlimited because it's being created by the users. So it's just a constant barrage. And the hits only need to be seconds long. You can get a meme that just has some words on it, and that's enough to get you go to the next one. Organizations that present the things that you're looking at, like news, they do try to tap into the same thing. They don't have the ability to create that level of content that quickly. So eventually you do get to the end of the day, and then you just run out of shit, right? You run out of things. That's probably the biggest difference between social media and just doom scrolling the news. You're eventually going to kind of run out to things that matter to you, unless you're like, well, now that I've covered all the American politics, let's go to Cambodia and like start scrolling there, but you're probably not doing that. Whereas on Facebook, you can go hours. You could probably go days if you wanted to before you started getting repeat content.
Forever. And I'm glad to hear the Zeigarnik effect, because this happens to me every day with my Google News feed. I have this incredible desire to get to the end of it. Thankfully, there is an end. It's an end, but it's ridiculously long. And I have to get through a lot of things. And with Google, I made a mistake. So I try to engage with my kids on the level or the things that they enjoy. So I've made the mistake of clicking.
You're like the Steve Buscemi meme. You're like Ecker attacking your skateboard.
Pretty much.
Hello, fellow young people.
Yeah, it's totally an affectation. But superheroes, actually, they're growing out of them. So I need to really work on my newsfeed. But I've clicked on too many superhero related things. So I get this inordinate number of superhero things. And what's fascinating is that, they are creating content. There's a limit to what they can make up, I guess. But the way they phrase the link becomes ever increasingly more inflammatory. Batman is dead. And you think, oh, this is about the latest movie or whatever. And you click it and it turns out it's some like old comic book from 40 years ago, completely unrelated, but they know how to grab your attention and adjust those links so that you do click them. And once you click them, the system knows what gets your attention, and then it feeds you more and more and more of it.
Well, there's the anecdote that men are getting in trouble, especially with TikTok, where they might linger a little bit too long on a woman or something. And then all of a sudden now their entire feed is just nothing but quasi pornography.
Women.
Yeah. For our tens of listeners, maybe just stay away from TikTok. TikTok is going to pull the truth. You're going to find out a lot about yourself. There's your reality.
Subconscious.
Yeah.
It reveals your subconscious.
This is what Robbie likes.
Right.
Flemish bow making.
My gosh, I'm so boring. My understanding is that young people are actually much more savvy about this and that it's an issue in young person relationships. So like Gen Z heteronormative relationship, the girlfriends are looking at the boyfriend's TikTok feed, and if there's like an inordinate number of women in the feed, they know this, they understand this, they know to look for this, and young people know to manipulate their clicks in order to average it out. So, and it plays into what you've said that young people will learn how to manage this.
Navigate these
You know,
systems better than us old fogies. Yeah.
exactly. I'm just too old to figure it out. I can't even
Your,
figure out how to get Flemish bow string making off my feed.
your spouse comes to you one day with a bow. We need to talk, Robbie. We need to talk. Exactly.
I think you've got a problem.
I think there's a problem here. All right.
Hey, it's Rob from Shrink the Nation. As my friend David so eloquently states at the beginning of the show, we are clinicians, but we're not your clinician. We love to joke around and dive into the tough topics, but there's something really important we need to say. If you're struggling with your mental health or facing substance use issues, we want you to know you're not alone. We have dedicated our professional careers to mental health, and we care deeply about it. It's okay to ask for help. Reaching out to a professional in your area could be the first step toward feeling better. Don't wait. There's support out there, and it works. Please take that first step. We want you to be well. Now let's get back to the show. Oh, and don't tell David I said he was eloquent. He'll be insufferable.
There's a little bit more to the psychological aspects of this, and this gets into where we start having major problems. So beyond the projection, the splitting, which are things that we do all over our lives. These are common things that people do, defense mechanisms. Something that social media really plays into is our confirmation bias and the
Yes.
illusory truth of fact. If we're only looking at things that confirm our beliefs, we're falling prey to the illusory truth of fact, which is the concept that if you repeat it enough, it will feel true. There's a huge psychological component, but it really does play into our neurobiology because of the way that our brain retrieves memories. Memories are not stored in our brain the way that they're written to a hard drive. Memories are stored by folding proteins. Whenever we need to pull a memory out, we have to basically do something physiologic inside of our brain to access that memory. In doing so, we can change it. We've known this for a long time. So the more that you hear something, the more that you're pulling that memory out, the more that it will change to the point that it becomes a reality to you. And social media continuously presents you with the things that you like. It's something that is going along with what you believe. If you keep watching it over and over again, whether it's real or not, it becomes real to you. It becomes a part of your reality.
A physical part of your brain.
Physically within your brain, it is real. Considering that that's how we perceive all of our reality is from within our brain. It's really hard to tell what's real and what's false when our brain is saying it's real. But
Yeah.
we're planting that in there through watching things over and over and over again and making it so. It's a real problem when it comes to living within a democracy where reality and truth can determine what direction we're going.
In past episodes, not that anybody would actually take the time to listen to past episodes. I wouldn't. I have mentioned this, but this brings it back to the forefront, which is, when I was a kid, there was 3 channels, ABC, NBC, CBS. And the way we got news was on the evening news. They really mirrored one another. You might have the lead that you were most attracted to or you found most likable. But fundamentally, the news sources were so limited that we had a shared truth, set of facts, that this was what we were working under. Because it was so contained, there was a lot of controls. There were journalistic ethics that were at play that controlled how they presented this information. And we as a population shared this set of facts. And that's just not the case anymore. And coupled with this algorithm issue, and it's not the algorithm at play. The algorithm is ultimately kind of stupid. It really is just designed to identify what you linger on, what you click, where in a video you click, et cetera, et cetera. My understanding is they can even tell you where on the screen you click, which tells them something. But it's just an algorithm. It just identifies what you are drawn to. The psychology is what draws you to those things. And then the politics is where I'm concerned. I do believe that 40 years from now, 50 years from now, we're going to look back. And as chaotic as things feel right now, I don't think what we'll really look at is so much the politics of this moment. It'll be in history books, etc. But what I think we'll look back on and really think a lot about, well, I won't because I'll be dead, but what future people will look back on and consider is that this was the moment in time in which technology outpaced humans' ability to manage the information. And it is stretching us, but we no longer have a shared set of facts. Everyone has an algorithmically individualized set of facts. And for a democracy, that is a problem. That is a significant issue, and it allows our politicians to micro-target individuals and make individualistic promises and tailor the narrative in a very individualized way that fits with an individual's psychology that skews this shared sense of reality.
When you micro tailor your promises, it's really fascinating because when you can speak so clearly to one group about one thing that matters so much to them, they're so much more willing to ignore the fact that you're doing the same thing to so many other groups. And maybe even your messaging is contradictory across the board because you're so enamored by this one message that you're willing to forgive all the rest, even though that same person is doing it to this group and then to this group, and there's nothing that really truly overlaps.
The nature of these echo chambers, you may not even identify that, the conflicted narratives, because you never get to see an alternative narrative.
Great case in point. Yeah, wonderful point there. When you're subscribed to your version of reality, that's all you're going to get. The fact that people are figuring out that all they have to do is tap into your version of reality enough to hit you and then move on to the next person and the next person. But you're right. Yeah, you've walled yourself off to the reality.
Let me ask you a question. I'm curious about this. What we're finding is that people are increasingly distrustful of traditional media sources, which fascinates me because traditional media sources have certain guardrails and journalistic ethics codes which help to ensure what they're presenting us is accurate. Cable news ended up altering that, and the influx of commentary and opinion pieces that are woven into the actual news has started to change things right around, into the 1990s, beginning of the 2000s. So it changed, but in general, people distrust traditional news, but they have an inordinate amount of trust for social media, new media driven news that is inherently untrustworthy. So is this narrative of don't trust the traditional news, is that these content generators creating this narrative in order to for their own financial gain?
I think yes, but there's a thing that happens often, all the time. I've been seeing this occur for the last decade at least, but this is definitely something that's been going on more and more. There's this thing that politicians do where they will make statements that have two ideas built into them. One of the ideas is going to be considered much more controversial than the other. And within a sentence, what will happen is your brain will hear two things, but it will accept one of them as truth because you jump immediately to the more controversial of the two and try to debate that piece without getting down to the fact that you just accepted something that wasn't real. It's a really interesting thing that I've seen happen a lot. It'll be a sentence like, you can't trust legacy media. All they do is tell you lies. I'm going to get rid of all taxes. and there's never going to be taxes ever again. And you immediately jump to the idea that, well, come on, man, you can't possibly get rid of taxes. And your brain skips over the fact that they've just planted something into it, and you accept that as truth. You can't trust the legacy media, and you keep hearing it over and over again until that becomes real. But you just never challenged that because you were so focused on the other piece. And I hear that all the time coming from politicians.
Yeah.
I wish I could say it was intentional. Maybe some people are very, very savvy, but you see this happen constantly. It's one of these things where if you look at the sentence written out and you read it and you circle what's not real, it stopped jumping straight to the controversial thing. We'd probably spot it more often and you start challenging those things, but you're accepting it as fact, as truth.
That's like a Sesame Street level exercise. Which one of these things is not like the other?
But they're both not true, right? Like, what's not real in the sentence? Well, everything except for is of the, that.
Yeah.
The prepositions are fine.
Conjunction, junction is fine,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and therein lies the problem. So when we think about tribalism, it is not that tribalism has not always existed. It certainly has. We've always had a two-party system, but it has escalated, and it really did start, and I couldn't tell you, I think it was 89 when CNN came online, when the cable news revolution happened. But the sense of tribalism has escalated. It escalated in the 90s. It further escalated in the 2000s. And I think it has further escalated in the teens and the 20s with social media. And this distrust, people that I respect and care about will say, I just don't trust anything that I hear. There's a profound problem in that if you can't trust what's being said, then how can we ever have a shared sense of what reality is? And because of the mechanisms of the repetition that ends up dictating what we feel, and it is an emotional experience more than a factual experience, what we feel to be true, social media is going to win every time. And this plays into the death of shame, actually, that politicians do not have to be held accountable because all they have to do is blame legacy media. And
Yeah.
they're the ones that actually are designed to hold them accountable. In the social media world, people are so entrenched in their echo chambers, they're not going to see an alternative narrative. We can't rely on social media to fact check.
Well, what's fascinating to me is that people will say you can't trust anything these days and then present facts, air quotes, from social media. They're saying, I don't trust anybody. I don't trust any source. And that's not true. That's just not true. They're saying that. What they're saying is, I'm only going to trust things that I believe to be true. I'm only going to trust sources that make me feel good. And we all do that in some ways. We're all capable because social media is so damn good at getting at our feels, showing you what you want to see and changing your sense of reality to believe that that's what's happening when it isn't what's happening. It's just what you're happy enough to see. It's what you're glad to look at. But when you keep telling yourself, I don't trust any source of news, that's not true. You absolutely do. You just don't trust the ones that might be telling you something that don't feel good and don't align with your values. I agree. The legacy media, the old news, that was the most important thing to keep politicians in check, to help us just have that sense of reality. That's why I like these apps that strip out the bias, because then you get really innocuous, this is what happened. Now, it is boring because you have to spin it yourself and decide what's good and bad. A really interesting case example is when you see a news story about a politician, they don't say whether they're a Democrat or Republican, and then you're not sure how to feel about the news story. They're like, fuck this guy. And then later in the article, it's like, well, he's a Republican. You're like, I mean, he's a great dude, though. And I'm sorry that happened, right? Or you're like, oh, this is the worst thing that could ever happen. What a horrible situation. Well, he's a Democrat. And you're like, oh, well, but that's fine. Because that's what people do. They're so tribalized now. They don't know how to feel about something unless somebody's telling them. And that's why social media is so easy.
Yes.
Because it's just giving
it
you
is.
good feelings.
Absolutely. I guess I'm laying at the feet of social media. The reality is cable news started this trend. And I can remember, I don't know, 2000-ish, 2001, I was at the gym and on a treadmill watching the morning news. And I remember thinking, You know what's really comforting about this is that they tell me the news and then they tell me how I should feel about it. And I don't have to do any work whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so they started this
Yeah.
and social media just continued it.
The funny thing is that they started it, but they've definitely not finished it. And
No, no, no.
they're barely a player in it now. It should probably be understood that cable news is entertainment. It's not necessarily the news. They're trying to tap into the same thing social media has. They're just limited. All the reason we just said, they don't have the ability to have the infinite loop. They don't have the ability to just throw news story at you all day. So they can only capture the attention for as long as they can capture the attention. Whereas in your pocket, you have a source of news, quote unquote, that is just always there and constantly updating you and giving you the feels. And for social media platforms like Reddit or Discord, then you have the ability to actually engage. Allows you to just go back and forth with people in a very hateful, angry way, which really does hit the reward pathway, gets that dopamine going, really gets you thinking about it all the time and obsessing on it and needing to respond. If you get likes, it feels so good. And if you really slam somebody, it feels so good.
And speaking about that, everyone should visit our Facebook page.
Smash that subscribe. Like our page.
No, even if you don't, I'm going to encourage you to, but even if you don't, some of the back and forth and coming at individuals in a aggressive, hateful way and then going back and forth with them.
Just a case study, yeah.
We're a case study in that. It makes for interesting reading. And I speculate most of the folks who end up posting probably are not part of our tens of listeners. I have a sense that maybe our population may not be hot take type of people.
Our tens of listeners aren't shit posting on our Facebook page about random stuff.
I speculate no.
I'm guessing no, but maybe we'd still love you anyway. I guess.
Absolutely. So
no, our Facebook page is a wonderful case study, usually in the topic that we are posting on, which is just whenever we have a new episode, we'll post a picture for that episode and a brief description. Hey, come and, this is what we're talking about. Come and listen to us. And we'll also post goofy ass little videos of us, from time to time as animated characters. Those get like no looks on Facebook. So nobody gives a shit on our reels. On YouTube, they're actually doing okay. TikTok, people kind of look at them, whatever. We need to make his avatar bustier, I think. Then we'll start getting looks, get that contouring going. It's always amazing. And I don't know if maybe there's irony to it, but people will typically post on our feed something that is either tangentially related or they will give a prime example, I think unironically, of the topic that we're talking about. Like the amount of cognitive dissonance that goes into some of the posts that we see on our cognitive dissonance episode post is amazing. The level of paranoia and conspiratorial thinking that's on our Paranoid Nation episode is just, chef's kiss. You couldn't ask for better examples of the opposite of what we're talking about.
That's the hilarious thing. It's all based on just a title. So everything that gets posted, I, again, heavily doubt any of the folks that post have listened, but it is purely projection regarding the title. The title in and of itself triggers an entire thought stream that has nothing.
Picture the title level of, I couldn't bother to listen to the episode to give you critiques on the episode, or it's engagement, I suppose. But yeah, it's really, it's a fascinating case study in the level in every topic. So I'm really interested to see how this one goes. I'm going to definitely be watching the algorithm episode on what people are saying here. I'm sure we've been accused of being ultra left wing. We've been accused of being ultra right wing. We've been accused of being pedophiles. We've been accused of being, I think somebody asked who owns us. Like we're part of the cabal.
Our propaganda.
We were accused of being Russian spies or something. I don't know what that one was. Yeah. We've had a lot of projection, in our direction, which is really interesting.
It is the job of a psychiatrist to accept said projection and not necessarily respond to it, but reflect on it.
Yeah. Well,
we're doing our gig. We're doing a good job.
Doing what we can. Okay, so we have some interesting things that have happened with social media, some of the rabbit holes. I don't know that we have time to go into all of them, but I do think one of the more interesting ones was the health trend contagions that occurred. During the pandemic, there was a group of young girls who started developing Tourette's syndrome like tics after just watching influencers who had Tourette's. It resulted in them getting these symptoms, but not having Tourette's syndrome. There was enough young ladies that were having this that came to everyone's attention, except for Rob's, who doesn't remember it, but everyone else probably
I do
remembers this
remember.
occurring.
I remember Tourette's people being influencers. I remember that moment in time. I didn't realize it resulted in people like having faux Tourette's.
Mostly young girls who were developing Tourette's-like symptoms after watching these influencers over and over again. This is something that happens. You have these self-diagnosis trends. You've spoken about the ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone seems to have. I've heard that in my household as well. Turns out you can have ADHD specifically towards math. These are the mass delusions, the patterns, things that can occur when these echo chambers exist and your reality shifts to where I think I must have Tourette's and you start having your own tics. Luckily, I think they go away once you stop watching hours and hours and hours on what Tourette's is.
Once the influencer loses their influence, lo and behold, cures the Tourette's. I wish it was that simple and normal.
But in all fairness, what med student hasn't been somewhat concerned about whatever their psychological or physical health as they're going through school?
Everyone.
Every single one is like, well, I have this, I have this. In fact, one of the most fun things to do as a psychiatric attending with med students is talk about personality disorders, because every student comes up to you at some point and goes, I think I might be narcissistic, or I think I might have schizotypal personality disorder.
Borderline.
And you're like,
yeah.
Every last one of them comes up and gives you the diagnosis that they think they have. And you have to sit down and explain to them, well, everybody has some of these traits. It isn't that. And then every once in a while, you're like, oh, shit, I think this person is good. I'm not going to say who, but you're like, yeah, no, you definitely do, kid. You
Yeah.
should probably see a
I
shrink
worked
for
with
that.
a resident once who had such an obvious personality disorder, and then I did a podcast with him.
I was flipping you off before you closed out your hilarious joke. It's all right. Robbie still thinks I post these to the internet.
It's funny.
It's his level of narcissism.
It's funny because it's true. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that's a extreme of the illusory truth effect, is that when you see something over and over and over again, you internalize it. And whether you internalize it as a truth or you internalize it as a condition, it happens. Fundamentally, we're not designed for what we expose ourselves to. And that's the modern world in general. We were not designed for fast food on every corner. We were not designed for alcohol at every potential place that you go. We were not designed for shopping. Yeah. Cheers. Shopping malls and online shopping and online gambling. Historically, for humans, there were a great deal of barriers that were between us and our addictive behaviors. And the problem now is the barriers have dissolved almost completely. And that's the struggle we're at.
All right. So we've been spending most of this episode, in fact, all of it, really bashing on technology, social media. Every medium has gotten blamed for the apocalypse at some point. Writing, surprisingly, Plato said it ruins memory. Printing press was all hearsay. Novels, when they came out, people were concerned there'd be a reading mania. Radio, cinema, they thought that was going to contribute to more delinquency. In the 1950s, there was a panic about comics. People were convinced that television was going to absolutely ruin all of us. It was the boob tube. We were just going to be sitting in front of it doing nothing else.
Drooling.
Video games were going to cause nothing but violent children who ran around doing horrible things.
Kind of seeing that now, though.
Yeah. Telephones were going to prevent us from reaching out, even bothering to be within face-to-face with one another. Cell phones were going to make it worse. And now we have social media. So we've adapted our norms and our designs for all of these things. We have libraries. We have rating systems. We have parental controls. We're the ones who bring the bias. The humans are. Technology didn't invent it. Technology is built to improve some aspect of our lives. We're the ones that are abusing it. But we've always found ways to not fall fully victim. And so if we develop norms, transparency, incentives, rather than just sitting back and going, oh my God, social media is going to ruin everything. Why not that? Why can't we
I
set those boundaries? Because we're the ones.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And you may, I mean, it's a compelling argument. You're right. There's always been every new technological shift has been associated with predictions of the end of the world. I guess my counter argument on this is that it's never true.
Even the nuclear bomb didn't end the world.
Well, not
I
yet.
mean,
Not yet. But
it hasn't. It hasn't because we've
it,
set boundaries. We've set norms.
well, there's a inherent self-preservation factor there too, that you can't use one without ending your own existence. So there's a built-in a backstop on that one. But all these things were overblown concerns until they're not overblown concerns. And I guess my counter argument to that is I hear everything you said. I still feel like you're full of shit. It's that ultimately, I think that we have just simply reached a point where the technology is beyond our ability to control it. And I think this is the point we're at. We're at this inflection point where technology has advanced to the point that humans no longer have the control. You're right. There is potential for putting some strictures on this, but I think it's the Pandora's box that's been opened that we just can't put it back. The incentives just don't exist, and it's beyond us at this point. So I do think that, and maybe it's because I'm an old guy and staring down the end of my existence and wondering about the generations to come and the world that I'm leaving behind. But I don't think this one's controllable.
You've been around for a long time, a couple
I have.
hundred
Well,
years at least. Right?
Salem witch trials.
Yeah. So at
Trials
least
right up to the present.
1690s. I do agree. The difference here is that this is a much bigger scale. Billions of people have cell phones in their pockets and access to social media. It's instant. It's the speed of this is so much faster than anything we've had before. There is a precision to it. We are micro-targeting individuals. Now they're also self-selecting, which is a part of it. It's less targeting and more selection. You're creating your own echo chambers. There's so much more interactivity. We're co-creating this false reality together. It's portable. It's in your pocket 24/7. What's the longest? Have you gone out of the house recently without your cell phone? Have
No,
you
it
ever
induces panic.
you never feel as naked as you do when you leave the house and realize you've not brought your cell phone.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm more likely to walk out of my house without pants than my cell phone.
You would feel more comfortable without pants than without your cell
Yeah.
phone, for sure.
Well, and I sometimes do that just to keep it spicy.
With your cell phone out, recording.
I can get away with it because I'm old enough that people just assume
They're
that
like, grandpa.
poor guy.
Grandpa.
Yeah, poor guy.
He's lost his pants.
Yeah.
Oh, look at the old man. How cute.
What happened to your pants, buddy?
But you got your phone? Is there a responsible adult for you? Can we call? Where's your life alert?
Exactly.
Just for everyone's awareness, Rob doesn't have a smartphone. He has a jitterbug.
I do. The big numbers help. Yep. Big numbers.
3 buttons.
Mm-hmm.
We've industrialized these defense mechanisms, the projection, the splitting, the cognitive dissonance, and the business model for them is rewarding outrage. We're basically selling out ourselves. I've said this before. If you pay nothing for something, you're the product. Everybody who is using social media is 100% the product.
Your attention.
The horse is out of the barn. We're not getting him back in. So we got to change something. And I don't know that I'm smart enough to know what that is. I can tell you that we've had things that worked in the past that made technology not ruin society. We've introduced seatbelts. We introduced speed limits. I think having more transparency to social media, understanding the algorithm, understanding what you're getting yourself into, understanding how they're making their money, and having them be more open about that would be helpful. I'm just saying we can blame social media all day.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, I love it. I love to blame social media.
The problem here is that it doesn't fix anything. To point blame and say it's social media's fault when we're the ones doing it. You have to learn to change what we're doing, because what we've already seen is that social media platforms are not interested in limiting their financial gain. Their financial incentive is the more people that are here, the more money we make. let's just keep going. And frankly, I think they like the brakes being taken off. So we got to do something for ourselves.
They have been. The brakes have absolutely been taken off. That's part of the problem. National institutional rules require political consolidation and agreement that at any given moment it's not going to happen because the party that is in power is probably the one that's being more effective in utilizing social media. So there's no interest on their part to implement these things. And then when you are not in power, all of a sudden you have an interest in implementing some controls and then it flip-flops. It creates a challenging scenario. Let's talk some actual prescriptions.
Okay. Prescriptions.
I'll go first. As I just alluded to, I think this is a massive problem. I think it's bigger than us as individuals. Not to say we can't respond on an individual level, but on a societal level, I do think government involvement is required. And I think there are some rules that need to be implemented on these social media platforms. And I think at very minimum, the algorithm needs to be known to us. So I can go buy a Twinkie and I can tell you everything in that Twinkie. Now, I may not be able to read the words or actually know what the materials in the ultra processed Twinkie is, but they have to tell me what I'm consuming. And I think these organizations really need to be transparent as to what their algorithm is doing, what they are tracking, and how they are identifying our likes and dislikes. So that's a societal one. It's probably, it's a serious one. It's also probably ridiculous.
Probably silly. All right. On the individual level, we got to turn off autoplay. We got to put our brakes on ourselves, understand everything that we just said. If you understood anything that we just said, but know thyself, understand the images on the screen that you're looking at is designed specifically to keep you locked up in your own attention. Take advantage of the Zeigarnik effect. Turn off the autoplay. Charge your phone outside of your room at night, get better sleep, let your prefrontal cortex work. You will immediately have better judgment just by getting better sleep. We tell all of our patients, it's getting to the point where you're like, you'll talk about sleep hygiene and people are like, yeah. But it's true. Stop looking at your phone right before bed. That's probably the worst time to be scrolling on TikTok, Instagram, or whatever, because you're not cognitively able to stop, and that's going to impact your sleep. It's going to be bothering your mind all night, and you're just not going to function as well. So, serious prescription, put the phone down. Don't look at it right before bed. Don't look at it in bed. Stop looking at social media. Turn off autoplay. Inject your own brakes. And it's probably silly because people won't do that, but they should do that.
I've said in the past that fervor is the defense of uncertainty. So when you're feeling uncertain about something, a position that you take, it is often those who are the most fervent are the ones who are the most uncertain. Now, the cure for uncertainty is curiosity. And the problem with social media is that it kills curiosity because it tells you what you want to see. It tells you what to learn. It tells you what you need to know. And it's unfortunately based on what you have previously already identified that you like. My prescription on the individual level is be curious. Search out more information in a more global way and the background information rather than just what's force-fed you by social media. Take a trip to your library, crack a book, think about it in a different way, or read about the background, whatever topic that you're so absolutely convinced is accurate from social media. Also, from an individual standpoint, my last prescription is that if you are stuck on TikTok, then you must do every TikTok dance that pops up. So you have to get up and do the TikTok dance every time it comes up. And I have a sense that either we'll get much more fit and we'll cure the obesity epidemic, or people will stop watching TikTok.
Or they're already doing it. Or that's already something they do for funsies. All right, so my national prescription would just be a cover charge for any shit posting, outrage posting, or anything else. So if you get all caps, bunch of exclamation points, it's going to trigger a "Are you sure?" And you got to pay some amount. Like, you can still post it, like, go on, be you, but it costs something to do that. And so what we'll be left with is just shit posts from Elon Musk.
He's the only one that can afford it. So, and to really maximize the cognitive dissonance after talking about social media, for our tens of listeners, go out to their social media sites of ours, smash that subscribe button, hit like, follow us.
Send us a nice message. What I think we're finding is that people who listen to us definitely do not visit us on social media. And to be honest, maybe they shouldn't. We should all sort of back
Maybe.
off. Yeah, I would say the only reason it lives in any of my technology is because of this show. So
Yeah.
that is pretty much it. Thanks to everyone who stuck around and listened to us today. And we really do appreciate every last one of you, however many there are. We still have the ability to send us questions directly through our website, shrinkthenation.com. And we have our weekly newsletter. So sign up for that, send us questions, and we'll get to them.
Yeah, I really dig doing the newsletter. So please sign up for it. It's a lot of fun.
All right. Well, we're going to cue up that music and get on out of here and have a great week. Talk to you later.